Right, gentlemen, today is our last day of this training, and today is actually the additional day of the training, and we are going to conclude it. We are currently on the fifth lesson, and we had already gone through about 37 slides of this, and we will be completing this one, and then the last lesson is going to be around 30 or 40 slides more. So we will be able to complete this. Before that, let me see what we studied in the previous lesson. The previous topic was this. We covered manage communications, empowering team, and yeah, empower team members and stakeholders, build a team, engage and support virtual teams, manage project artifacts, and determine appropriate project methodology, method, and practices. Actually, this was all what was happening in our monitoring and control. And we skipped a lot many things because we had already studied them in an earlier lesson about when we were talking about forming the team and managing the stakeholder and all. So actually what is happening is that during the monitoring and control, we are actually performing those acts we planned in earlier chapter. So we talked about all those things once again from the perspective that now we are doing them. Next topic is evaluate project progress. That is where we check whether we are going according to our project objective. That is, are we on schedule, on cost, and according to our scope or not? And if at all there is any change, we are not, according to the planned baselines, then probably we may have to introduce the change request for that. And in case of a change request being approved from a competent authority, we will have to after the re-baseline these baselines and accordingly amend all the calculations wherever required. So our project management plan and our baselines may be amended as a result of the change request. So there are two things which are important in this chapter. Number one, how to change the baselines, and second, how to what is the process of changing the baselines. That is a change request, and second thing is monitoring and control. So guidelines for measuring the performance. Naturally, you understand that we will actually be looking after the three baselines: scope, time, and cost. These are the first 3 points on this slide. Once we watch them and we find that something is not according to the scope or is not according to the schedule baseline or the cost baseline, we may have to bring certain changes. And those changes, as a result, may happen in any area, even in addition to scope, time, and cost, because while you are adjusting the scope, time, or cost, you may be making amendment to the number of resources, to the quality of the work, to the risk register, because new risks might have arisen which you might not have thought earlier, and probably these things will be changing. Why are we only changing the baselines? Because baselines impact everything else on the project. If a scope baseline is to be amended, or schedule baseline is to be amended, the duration is to be shortened or lengthened, or the cost of the project, the budget is to be amended, that will actually result on any other area. But because we are more concerned only about the baseline, so if the baseline is changed, resultantly, changes to any other knowledge area is acceptable. Because you see, we only have three baselines. All other things are impacted as a result of that, right? So we don't actually monitor the resource baseline. There is no resource baseline. There is no quality baseline. There is no risk baseline. But there are only basically three baselines: scope, time, and cost. What are we going to be measuring here? We'll be looking at any, how much work has been completed and how much was supposed to be completed as per the scope baseline. If there are any change requests, then naturally the process of change request should be properly followed. As far as schedule is concerned, we will naturally have a schedule baseline which tells us exactly when a specific activity according to the baseline is supposed to start at what point in time and when it is supposed to finish. And then because we have performed them, rather we are performing them, so we would know that which activity has actually started at what point and ended at what point. That gives us the variation from our planned schedule. And if there is any variation, that means there is a change to the schedule, and that because these dates have actually happened, so they did not happen according to the plan. And if they did not happen according to the plan, we have to adjust the schedule for the remaining period of the project. Similarly, for the budget, we do have a cost baseline established during the planning. We know how much money is budgeted to be spent for each activity. And now we have data which activities have actually completed and how much money has actually been spent on them. So using the method of earned value management, we will be able to measure how far behind we are from the schedule we actually planned, or how far ahead we are, or how much have we really accomplished. So naturally, if we are not according to the cost, we also may amend the cost. We may have to amend the budget, and ultimately those things should be reflected through a change request, and the budget has to be re-baseline. As a result, if due to any one of these baselines, if there is required to be any change to the resources, like resources have to be shifted, increased or decreased, or the contracts we have with our vendors, they have to be amended in light of that. The work is to be increased or decreased. The quality performance is to be adjusted. Defects are to be treated. Risks registers has to be changed, and the responses has to be rehashed. All of this will be as a result of the changes either to the scope or time or to the cost. As such, as I said earlier, we don't actually monitor the resource as a baseline or any other area as a baseline. Only three baselines are to be monitored: scope, time, and cost. So two things are happening. We are monitoring those baselines. And second thing is, if there is a change, then we are getting those change requests approved from the change control board, right? Okay. Then we have a report on performance. And what is the report on performance? Why we are talking about performance? Our performance baseline is collectively the three baselines put together. The project performance baseline actually means we are talking about the three baselines: scope baseline, schedule baseline, and cost baseline. So we have to look at the actual performance and have to amend any one of these baselines through a change request. So we do have things like in agile and hybrid projects. We have milestone schedule, high level visualization of the progress on work against the planned dates, quality reports, which tells us shows us the charts and reports based on the quality metrics collected, earned value management report, which is shown like graphs and values based on the various earned value calculations which we talked about. Variance analysis means how much have we varied from the three baselines in scope, in time, and in cost. So they can also be in form of graphs and other analysis comparing actual results to the expected results. Actual is what we actually have done. and expected is what was initially planned and baseline. So if there is any variation between these two figures, probably we have to readjust the baseline, and for that, we have to move a change request, and there is a mechanism for moving the change request. Okay, how do you move the change request? We'll talk about that, but first of all, we see how do we know that we have this variation. Now, when we are trying to measure this variation, we have to look at each and every area. We will monitor each and every area, but because there is no baseline other than the scope, time, and cost, so our formula would be that if there is any change in any area, uh, even in addition to scope, time, and cost, when we will be monitoring, say, resources, we will be monitoring the stakeholder, if there is any change in those things from the plan, that would be reflected in shape of their effect on the three baselines. Do they, if we say that we have to change a specific human resource, so we will analyze that does it have any effect? Does this change has any effect on the scope baseline or the schedule baseline or the cost baseline? So a change request is valid only and only if there is any impact on any of the three baselines. So basically, we are looking at the baseline, but from the angle of all other knowledge areas. So basically, what is happening while the project is going on, we are monitoring the project. We are receiving from execution a work performance information. Now, work performance information is a raw data generated during execution. For example, this activity started on this date, actual date, when this activity actually started. This is the work performance information. Sorry, data. Work performance data could be how much time this activity has actually taken, how much money was actually spent on this activity, how much work has been accomplished during this activity. All this data is supplied by execution to the monitoring and control. And monitoring and control already holds the data of the actual baselines, what was supposed to be the shape of the scope baseline and the schedule baseline and the cost baseline. And once we compare this work performance information, work performance data with our baselines, we will be able to find the variance analysis report. We can further calculate the earned values. We can see the impact of change on various areas. And this analyzed report, sorry, not the report, this analyzed data, when it gets analyzed, the work performance data coming from execution, after processing in execution by various knowledge areas, it is converted into work performance information. So when the data is processed, we call it information. The work performance data, there was the raw data coming from execution. After looking at this data and analyzing this data from the angle of every knowledge area, specifically looking for any change in scope, time, and cost, this thing has become the work performance information. Now, every knowledge area has a control in monitoring and control. And for example, there is a scope control, there is a schedule control, there is a cost control, there is even a resource control, there is even a stakeholder engagement control. And every one of the 10 knowledge areas has a control there. All these are individually looking after if they are causing any impact on the scope, time, and cost baseline. So this information is generated by them. All the controls generate separately this information. They analyze individually and they generate this report. This information. Now, all the informations created by various controls are sent to a central place That is, integration is the central place. Integration is the knowledge area, which is at the heart of it. And these informations are collected by the process called monitor and control project work. Monitor and control project work is an integration process. Actually, there are two integration processes here. One is called monitor and control project work, and the other is called uh, change control, the overall integrated change control. That is, all the result of all the change controls could be cumulated there. But right now, I'm talking about the monitor and control project work. All other controls are supposed to send their processed data, which is now called the work performance information, to the monitor and control project work, which is going to assemble all these work performance informations into a single report, cumulative single report, which is called the work performance report. So when all the informations are integrated by the monitor and control project work, which is an integration process, the result is a work performance report. Now, this work performance report is a major document which tells us where the specific changes might be required, right? And all the controls which have analyzed each one of the knowledge areas, they could have resulted in certain change requests. So various change requests may be from the resource knowledge area, so resource control, or maybe from communication control or the stakeholder control, or even the scope control, schedule control. They will individually be moving certain change requests, and the criteria for the change request would have been that we are in variation from the baseline, and the baseline has to be corrected, and this is requested by them that this baseline can be corrected in this manner. Now, all these requests, like, all the controls are creating two things basically. One thing is the work performance report, and that is collected by the monitor and control project work. On the other hand, they also, those controls also generate the change request, which is sent to the other integration process, which is called integrated change control. So that receives all the change requests. Now, this is the place where this change request is going to be presented in front of the change control board. Change control board will decide the fate of each one of these change requests. Some of these change requests may be approved. Some of them will not be approved. If they are not approved, they will be sent back to the control as if they can come up with another suggestion. But naturally, the thing has happened. The information shows, the work performance information, our report shows that things have gone wrong. They are not according to the baseline. And the action suggested in the change request was not approved, but then an alternate action have to be suggested. It is not sufficient that you say, okay, your change request is not approved. That doesn't mean the matter is resolved. The matter still stands hanging in balance. For example, you say, you suggest that because this activity has been delayed and this activity was on the critical path, it is delayed by 2 days. That means we will have to either be given 2 extra days in the critical path as if we can complete the project, or we would suggest certain ways to reduce 2 days from the remaining work of the project. So basically, our change request, which was actually working on reducing the 2 days duration from the remaining work of the project, was not approved. Then automatically we could either request another option, or ultimately the 2 days addition to the project critical path may have to be approved, meaning project duration will have to be amended as a result of the change request. So some action is required. So that is called approved change request. And in case the change request has been approved, that automatically means that all the relevant documents, that means the project management plan and its ingredients like the baselines and all, and on the other hand, all the project documents, you remember, project documents were so many documents like, the Gantt charts and other things were created. And, the activity lists and risk registers, all those things were in the project document. Those will also have to be updated as a result of an approved change request. Well, that is something which explicitly happens in a predictive project, but naturally, because we are talking here about a hybrid project as well, therefore, we mentioned the variance analysis, the work performance report, the earned value, all of this does apply. In a way, these methods in a different way, there is an application of earned value even in agile, although we don't have the whole plan of the whole project, but naturally we can apply it to our iteration, a single iteration. We will be doing a little bit of earned value, the variance analysis and all these kinds of reporting within the iteration. But naturally, the differences is that in agile, we do not plan everything upfront, but we plan one iteration at a time. So in a way, I can say that an iteration is like a mini project to us, and we will be applying all the monitoring and control mechanisms which otherwise are happening in a predictive project. Within an iteration of agile, we may apply those things which can be applied. Then we have dashboards. Dashboards are kind of the result of these reporting, the work performance reports, which are created as a result of monitoring and control. They could be shown to various stakeholders in various different formats, like maybe on a screen, on a dashboard, like which shows all the information you think that stakeholder might be interested about that project. It might be possible that different stakeholders may be able to see the progress of the project in a different manner. I mean, someone is more interested in the consumption of resources, then that stakeholder will only be shown the items of their interest. So various dashboards could be screens or reports or whatever formats they need, but actually they will be portraying the same progress which is shown through the Gantt chart, through the other documents, critical path and all. So in any other format which is required and desired by various stakeholders, they could be presented. It could be physical and they could be electronic. Okay, before I can start with each one of the knowledge areas, so tell me, so far, are you following me all right?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Good. Now, let us talk about all the controls, right? What does each one of the control does, right? How the scope is monitored, how the time is monitored, or a cost, and even other controls are, what are they doing? So when we look at monitor scope, in the predictive method, we do have the whole scope established, which is called the scope baseline, which is the approved version of the project scope statement. And you remember, project scope baseline included the scope statement, the work breakdown structure, and the work breakdown structure dictionary, which also included the work packages and planning packages. This was all in the scope baseline. Now, what do we do? How do we, measure it? We measure the completion of project scope, that which of the activities of the project have completed their job. If the work assigned to an activity has been accomplished, so we would say that is treated as a done. So that means we measure the completion of project scope against the scope baseline, right? And if it is okay, then we say it is accomplished, or if it is not completed, so far, which is supposed to be completed by a specific time, then we would have to move a change request in scope for that specific job. In case of Agile, because we do not plan everything upfront and scope is evolving over time, starting from the initial product roadmap and then going through the release backlogs and iteration backlog, because we are more focused on iteration backlog. But remember, although our focus is on iterations, but after every iteration, we did create a release backlog, a product roadmap. So after every iteration, we will readdress the product roadmap and release backlog, and they may be amended as a result of completion of every iteration. May be amended if there is a change if we are not going exactly according to the roadmap or the contract for that matter, then we just like a change request, we don't have a change request in Agile, but we are authorized, sitting with a customer, we could change the shape of the product roadmap and the release backlog. Again, I would say we don't need a change request for that. We don't have change requests in Agile. So scope can directly be changed in consultation with the customer after every iteration. We will do this consultation after every iteration, and we could change the roadmap. So roadmap is, we have already said that scope is versatile. Scope could change in Agile throughout, but the time and cost is fixed, right? As far as the time is concerned, every iteration has a fixed time, say 2 weeks. So time cannot change, right? So whatever could be achieved in those 2 weeks, based on that, we would be amending our main plan, the product roadmap or the release backlog, right? And similarly, whatever we do in iteration, that will cost us some money, and that would be approximately the same amount for every iteration. So in a way, I can say the cost is also fixed. The only thing which is varying here in Agile is the scope, right? So we are here. We don't have to move a change request, but we will after every iteration review our progress with the customer and stakeholders, and we will mutually decide to make certain amendments accordingly to the roadmap or the release backlog. And you understand the backlogs, including product features and functions and user stories, they will also be changing after every iteration, because after the iteration is complete, the team is going to go back and review the new items in the product backlog, and ultimately product backlog will be revised as well, right? So scope is changing all the time. And the method here would be naturally through user stories, through the definition of done, the customer feedback, product requirements, and all that. Whereas in a predictive, we have to measure the physical completion of a project scope against the scope baseline. And in case if we are varying, we move a change request in case of predictive. Well, if you are dealing with a hybrid project, probably you will have some kind of a combination between these two, because as in our case study we said that from top we are predictive and at bottom we are agile. Then at bottom we will be working like agile, and we will be working in iteration, whereas at top the project manager and project sponsor would be dealing with their overall plan. So good so far?
Yes, sir.
Okay. As we talked about scope, scope has another process. In the monitoring and control, scope has two processes. One was scope control, which is a mechanism of actually looking at you remember when we established the scope, when we established the scope statement, we had two kinds of scope. One was the project scope and one was the product scope. Do you remember that? So as far as the project scope, which is the scope of the work, project scope, that is being monitored by this process, monitor scope. So essentially, monitor scope is the process which is looking after the project scope. And validate scope or scope validation is the process which monitors what? The product scope. That means the physical acceptance of the product, the acceptance criteria established in predictive project. We have only one final acceptance criteria for the whole product. Whereas in Agile, you do understand that we have acceptance criteria for each and every user story, right? And while in predictive, our acceptance criteria is accepted at the very end of the project for the whole product. Whereas in Agile, after every iteration, whatever we have accomplished and approved, those things are accepted by the customer there and then, but they may not have been actually handed over. So in Agile, we have a concept of acceptance criteria for the user stories. Plus, when we actually hand over those items to the customer physically, we will have to comply with certain compliance requirements in addition to the acceptance criteria. And whole of this put together, acceptance criteria completion plus the compliance requirement, is called the definition of done. And we have already talked about the definition of ready. When we plan something and we are now ready to start working on something, that is called definition of ready. And then we have iteration reviews at the end of every iteration. So in Agile, the acceptance procedure is based on these four things. Whereas in predictive, we just have a simple acceptance criteria. Actually, the acceptance criteria of predictive is including the all the compliance requirements as well for the whole product, right? So we have only one term, acceptance criteria, which says everything, not only the product, all the requirements of the product, but also all the acceptance, all the compliance requirement of quality, of safety, or environment, or whatsoever is applicable. That all is inclusive in the acceptance criteria. Whereas here, because we have the acceptance criteria for each user story in Agile separate, so when, say, 5 or 6 user stories are cumulatively being handed over to the customer, those 5 or 6 stories for them, we have to complete the definition of done as well, right? And definition of done will, in addition to whatever those acceptance criteria for those user stories are concerned, in addition to that, we also have to complete and fulfill all the required compliances. I hope that is clear. And in hybrid, that is a combination of both. So that concludes our discussion about the scope control. I mean, the two processes of controlling the scope in the monitoring and control. First was scope control, which was about the project scope. And the second process is about the scope validation, which is about that deliverable, the scope of the product, right? And by the way, these terminologies are not used exactly in Agile like that, but these processes, scope control and scope validation, are akin to a predictive project only. But I'm just showing here that in Agile, what is equivalent of that thing in an Agile project that I said, that would be definition of done and all that. Anyways, on the right-hand side, there are two questions written here, and if you like, you can try to attempt that. The upper one, in a predictive development approach, which artifact helps determine the acceptance criteria? In predictive development approach, which artifact helps determine the acceptance criteria? Is it the responsibility traceability matrix? Is it the scope statement? Is it the team charter? Or is it the stakeholder engagement plan? What do you say?
Scope statement.
Scope statement. Okay. Eddie, what do you say?
Same, sir, same.
Jim? And what if I say that you are wrong? No. Actually, if we had requirements traceability matrix, because it has written responsibility traceability matrix, there is nothing as a responsibility traceability matrix. Then, if I had that, I would have compared my requirement or traced my requirement according to that. But in this specific case, all the acceptance criteria are given in the scope state. Okay, in an adaptive development approach, what helps determine that the acceptance criteria for user stories has been met? Is it the roadmap? Is it the definition of done? Is it the release plan? Or is it the Kanban board? Yes, please.
DOD.
DOD, of course, of course. Very good. Okay, moving on to schedule performance. Naturally, I have already told you we have got tools like Gantt charts, on which we can physically see what is happening, where are we behind, and where we are ahead on schedule. And based on the data coming out of it, we can do the earned value, the quality matrix could be done, variance analysis could be done, and we can compare the work which has actually been delivered and accepted to estimation for the current iteration or sprint. That is specific to Agile. But in predictive, we may be using those tools. But in Agile, because every iteration is a small little project, so we could apply those things somehow in each iteration. Review completed work in regular sprint demos in case of Agile. Determine production validation acceptance rates for deliverable in retrospective, right? So we do all that in retrospective after every iteration and conduct scheduled reviews to record retrospective discoveries. That is the lessons we are learning. So the approach is slightly different, but scheduled performance measurement could be done in both manners, in both kind of methods, but in a different way. Okay, then we come over to the schedule management tools. We have already talked about various tools we use. In that, we adjust the schedule to reflect the resource supply and demand. Like, you remember we talked about smoothing and leveling. Remember that? That is a tool, right? So we look at how much resources are available, how much have been used, and what is happening all around there. We use the smoothing and leveling, and we use the schedule compression techniques. Actually, we studied those things for this process. Fast tracking, crashing, all that is happening here, right? So we use those tools to adjust our schedule accordingly. Then we visualize our performance. In case of Agile, we say whatever we achieved in this iteration, we record the number of story points and we project that in our velocity, team velocity. And in our retrospective, we also keep learning lessons out of it. And that gives us a pace of what we are achieving in every iteration. During an iteration, we set a target for this iteration of, okay, I have to complete 200 story points in this. So we work backwards. We do the burn down chart. We start with a 200 point on a graph, and that is the total work to be done in this iteration. And we keep plotting it on daily basis. How much is the remaining work now? Say, after one day, we say that out of 200, 200 is the total work. And at the end of the first day, we have 180 story points as a remaining work. So our graph will come down from 200 to 180 until by the end of the iteration, we should be on 0.0. That will give our burn down rate. So this is the burn down chart, right? Which is exactly opposite to a normal progress chart of our predictive thing. Because in that, the predictive or schedule baseline moves from 0 to upward like a S curve. Here, we work in iteration and we are working on iterational basis on a burn down chart. But then we also have the concept of burn up chart in Agile. And what happens is after every iteration, we plot the ultimate result of that iteration on a burn up chart. So what is accomplished in first iteration? We put, say, we accomplished 200 points. Okay, what is accomplished in second iteration? We plot it on, say, 180 points. What is in third iteration? Say 190 points. So that way, this is a burn up chart. So this is similar to what is in predictive project, the chart moving from 0 point upwards. But this is not a kind of a S curve. This is going to be a parabolic chart constantly rising, because in Agile, we are continuously improving. Maybe we started with 200 and then there was some fluctuation, and ultimately we at least have a sustainable pace. So on average, we are doing 200 or so. So that could be a straight line or a line moving upwards, not like a S curve. Anyways, how do we plot all these things? We do have information radiators. Rather than having so many charts and reports moving around in the stakeholders, we rather put everything on the wall, on the information radiators. Burn down and burn up chart are also on the radiator. Our daily progress is also on the radiator. Our problems are also on the radiator, on the wall. And in case of our online environment, all these charts and graphs are, which are physically on walls, are actually on virtual walls, right? On a workspace, which is provided access to all the stakeholders, they could watch our information radiators from anywhere. Just like we had dashboards in a predictive project, so we have information radiators, which are like software like Jira, other agile software. They do provide access to interact with all the stakeholders, like they're in a video conference or a physical online cloud environment where the information radiators are also available for them to see in whatever dashboard format they want. Then we measure performance with lead and cycle time with a cumulative flow diagram. This is another diagram which tells us what is the total work at any point in time and how much work at any point in time has been accomplished. You see, the product backlog, for example, there were 2,000 items in the overall product backlog in the beginning. You know that this is not going to remain 2,000. After every iteration, new items will be added. The customer is continuously, suggesting new requirements. So this number of 2,000 is not going to remain 2,000. It may be increasing over time, right? So maybe we end up with 4,000 story points. 2,000 user stories. So that means our requirement, our scope is continuously changing. And naturally, whatever is the current number of user stories to be accomplished, based on that, we will see how many user stories have so far been accomplished and how many stories we are currently working on. This kind of a diagram, which continuously shows the current status of the product roadmap, the current status of the work accomplished, and the current status of the work in progress, that is called a cumulative flow diagram. Anyways, we also have Kanban and task board, which you already know about, where we actually put on the ongoing progress of our iteration. And this is the replacement for a schedule baseline. We don't have a schedule baseline in Agile. So we have rather a simpler method, which is just like a grocery list, which is either a Kanban chart, a board, or a task board. So that could be used. And this is a simpler approach. Continuous flow approaches include throughput, cycle time, and lead time. When we are using the cumulative flow diagram, we can calculate what is the, over the iterations, what is the average throughput we are getting, what is the cycle time, how much time it takes for the requirement to be received and done, and what is the lead time and things like that. Lead time is the time we need for a requirement to be provided and the requirement to be started. So that say the moment that requirement was given and the moment that requirement was we started working on, that time is the lead time. And the moment that requirement was given and when the requirement was completed is the cycle time. Anyways, this is how these things are. So time-boxed approaches include the velocity, and naturally, as a result of the cumulative flow diagram, it would be much easier for us to, establish our velocity, our team velocity over time. That is how we visualize our progress. Now, there is a little video here for information radiators, which I have already been talking about with you, but let me show you this video as if you can be more comfortable with it. Just a moment.
%90 of all the information transmitted to the brain is visual. Not surprisingly, visuals are processed 60,000 times faster than text. We are wired to automatically interpret patterns for instant comprehension with almost zero effort. Want to see some examples? What do you see right away? A different shape. And with this one, a different size. And with this one, a different color. That brings us to an information radiator. An information radiator is a type of visual control that displays project information in a place where passersby can see it and get information without having to ask questions. The far left column of this example starts with the project charter. This lists the project's primary objectives, key features, and cautions and risks. It also lists those who have key roles in the project's completion: the product owner, the architecture owners, and the team lead. Finally, it provides a glossary of project terms which may not be widely known. The next column of this example indicates any impediments and blockers that are slowing or preventing progress on the project. This includes both known and outstanding blockers, and those that have been mitigated or completed. The bottom of this column provides a convenient place for the color coding to reside. In this case, green for done, blue for started, red for blockers, and yellow for dependencies. The large center section of this example shows the product backlog. It also shows the iteration backlog, the specific tasks being worked on by members of the team in the current iteration. The far right section of this example shows the iteration burn down, the rate at which the team is burning through its customer stories. This can tell the team whether they are on track, ahead, or behind the committed work. It also shows the release burn up. This monitors progress of release commitment iteration by iteration and gives the team a projection of when they will meet their release goal. And finally, it shows working agreements. These agreements detail how the team will work together and what they can expect of each other. Of course, this is just an example.
I hope you understand what this information radiator is explained in this slide. I think that was quite comprehensive, a very brief video, but it was very comprehensive. So, what is your input on that? Was it useful?
Yeah,
Yep.
yes. Visual stimulation is better than text.
Exactly.
What's happening to the screen, sir?
You can't see that?
That's fine. Carry on.
Yeah. What is the problem with the screen? Tell me.
There's just some like dark spots, but it's fine.
Okay. Do the dark spot move around?
No, sir.
It's not moving around. Okay, let me reshare it with you. Just a moment. You tell me if it is all right now.
It's fine, sir.
It's fine. Okay. Can you see my video?
Yes.
I can't see it. I don't know where it is. Let me see. Okay. Okay. Right. Okay, so this is an example of the burn chart. Like this one is a burn down chart, and you see the blue line. This was we planned, the team planned that in this iteration we will be doing say 190 story points, and we draw a straight line till the end of the iteration, and this is supposed to be how we should be progressing, right? Okay, after one day, we were supposed to be at 180 point, meaning the remaining work will be 180, meaning we would have done 10 story points by one day, right? But actually, what happened is we did more than that. So if the red line is lower than the blue line, that means we are doing more than expected, right? If the red point was above the blue line, that would mean that we did less than we did not meet the target. We did less than what was supposed to be done. For example, if this dot was here on top, it would mean that we are that much number of story points behind schedule. Anyways, so this is how the actual progress is being plotted in a zigzag form, and if we are able to ultimately meet the end date, then we are all right, right? But actually, this is not really going to be this efficient. Our actual progress line, our actual graph, the zigzag graph, might sometimes be crossing over to the other side of the blue line also. But this is just an example where red line is the actual progress on daily basis of the remaining work, and blue line is the expected points of daily burn down. Is that okay with you? Yes, Eddie?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, let me show you the burn up chart. So let us see, burn up chart is a graph which is moving upwards. Now, this is interesting because we are using two lines. One is the total work, that is the total product roadmap. I mean to say that what is the product backlog? Sorry. What is a product backlog? Initially, when we started the first iteration, the product backlog was 100 points. So 100 stories or 100 points, whatever that means. So that was 100 points. But and it remained to be 100 points for next 5 iterations. There was no new requirement added. And the red line shows how much are we accomplishing. So at the beginning of first iteration, we did nothing. In the beginning of second iteration, we were at this point. That means out of 100 story points, we have accomplished, say, 10. And now this red line is going to give us the progressive upward movement of what we are doing. And the blue line is going to give us the status of the product roadmap over time. So after 5 iterations, some new, around 10 new story points were added to the product backlog, and that also continued for another 3 iterations and so on. So you see, the changes in the scope, the requirement change is shown by the blue line, and the actually work done is shown by the red line. This type of chart is called a burn up chart, and this somehow is similar to our project progress chart in a predictive project, because that also moves in a upward movement. Are you okay with it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Okay. This is an example of your task board. We have talked about it a lot many times. We have basically three columns. You could have more columns, but basically three columns. First is the iteration backlog, which is called the to-do list. Then we have got work in progress, or we call it working or work in progress. Work in progress is a term specifically taken out of lean methodologies like Kanban, and done is whatever is the work has been completed, whatever user stories has been accomplished, they have been done, they move to the third column. The ones we are working on right now, they are in middle column, and all of the items we need to do in this iteration are moved into the iteration backlog, which is the to-do list. I hope that you understand. We already know about it. We talked about it a lot many times. Okay, now let us see what is a velocity chart. At the end of every iteration, what was your accomplishment? How many story points have you accomplished at the end of first iteration, at the end of second iteration? So if you can show it in form of a histogram, that will give you a velocity chart, right? And the red line, the red dotted line you can see here, is kind of a statistical average of your velocity, of your number of stories you are accomplishing. So your velocity will come out to be something like, say, in this case, around, say, 95 story points is your average velocity for this team, for this agile team. I hope you understand how this histogram is formed. Mazen? Okay with that?
Okay.
Okay, on the next slide. Now, this is again a very interesting diagram. This is also part of all of these charts I'm showing you. They are actually part of the information radiator, right? Now, this is a very interesting diagram because this diagram shows what the progress of the roadmap, the progress of the work still lying in the product backlog and which has not yet been started, and the work which has been started. You know, the golden area on top, the golden area shows the work in product backlog. The highest line, the top line, the silhouette of the golden line, the top line, is showing the product roadmap changing over time. Product roadmap is new requirements are added, and when they are added, the graph is moving up. And then, so right now, at the at the end of the project, we had total of these many user stories so far given to us. The upper line shows that. Okay, what is this purple line? The purple area shows the work in progress. You can see that work in progress. Current backlog, what is remaining work to be done is the backlog. The distance from the top of the golden area to the bottom of the golden area at any point is the remaining backlog at this time. How much work more is needed to be done. And the distance between the top of the purple area to the bottom of the purple area is the work we are performing right now. So at various times in the life of the iteration or in the life of the agile project, we could say what was our work in progress. For example, at this point, our work in progress was too less. At this time, our work in progress was this much. And at this time, this much. So it keeps varying. Your work in progress is varying over time. And in the blue area, the upper line shows what is the work which has not yet been started. No, I'm sorry. The blue area shows the work which has been done. So for example, if say at this point, this was the total backlog at this point, this much work has been done and handed over. This much work is being, we are working on right now, and this much work is still in the backlog. So our backlog is very small at this point. Comparing it with the very last point, the work done is this much, work in progress is this much, and the work remaining to be done is this much. I hope that that is clear. Okay, if you look at the other side, we see two points, two items written here: the lead time and the cycle time. For example, there was a requirement conceived at this point in time, and if I draw a straight line from that point to where that activity was done, you measure the distance from here to here. That will give you the time required for time it took for this activity or user story from the conception or addition to the backlog till it was completed, till it was accomplished, till it was done. This is called the lead time. Then what is the cycle time? The time a user story takes from its start till it is accomplished, till it is done. So this is the cycle time. So you see, at some points, the cycle time is very large. At some times, like at this point, the cycle time is very small. Maybe at this point, it is very, very large. Now, lead time, similarly, a very large lead time here. And maybe if I compare it from this point to this point, the lead time is small. So yes, these figures are really very important, because on this chart, we can say, okay, we need to reduce our lead time, or we need to reduce our cycle time, or we must keep less work in the work in progress. We should not, work in progress should never exceed this limit, and things like that. So that way, we can exercise a lot of control over the agile work. Does it make any sense to you?
So the lead time will be for the user story life cycle. And cycle.
Yeah, exactly. Not really life cycle. That is the life cycle of the user story is the cycle time. Actually, right from the conception of that, the receipt of the user story until it is done is the lead time.
Okay.
Right? And this is the start of that activity till end of that activity. That is the cycle time. Got it? So the important things here are the work in progress on the vertical score, the remaining backlog, and done. The blue area, if I draw a point from here to here, that is done. And if you talk on the horizontal, we have got lead time and the cycle time, as I just explained to you. Okay, moving on. Then we have the budget challenges, new and changed project requirements. We have to kind of adjust our budget accordingly. If there are new risks or changes to the probabilities or impacts of existing risks, then probably we have to adjust our budget according to that, or we may have to change the cost estimate. But these budget challenges are more relevant to predictive projects, right? In agile projects, the time and cost is fixed and the scope is changing. Whereas in a predictive project, scope is fixed and time and cost is fluctuating. So I would say the budget challenges are more towards the predictive projects. Earned value management, again in predictive, we have already studied about the calculations and all. So basically we measure that, okay, how much work was planned to be done, how much work has actually been done, and how much money has actually been spent. Now, these three things are compared. Are we spending more money than what we have done? Are we doing more work than what we planned? And things like that. And we calculate the schedule and cost variances and progresses on the earned value scale. So we can compare not only the budget progress, but also the schedule progress on it Rather, in a way, you can say that earned value can even address the accomplishment of scope. So scope baseline, schedule baseline, and cost baseline all can be visualized through the earned value management in predictive projects. This is how it is. We have seen probably the earned value management thing earlier. I'm just showing this diagram just to refresh your minds. The orange line here is how we planned the things to happen. So naturally, because we planned the whole project, so this is how we expect the project to progress over time, right? So starting from here until the end of the project. We are currently standing at this point in the 8th month of the project, and whatever has been the actual progress so far, that is shown through the yellow and this purple line. Yellow line means earned value, and that means this was the work to be planned to be done, and this is the work which actually has been delivered. Earned value is the accomplishment. That means we have done more work than planned. Until this point, until the 5th month, because on the 5th month, we were exactly crossing over. That means we did that much work as was planned. But after that, our earned value started going below the orange line, and that means we started doing less than what was the plan. We started remaining behind the plan. That is about the work, about the work. But the purple line or the blue line shows the expenditure of money. Well, expenditure of money can only be compared with the yellow line, not with the pink line, because yellow line is what we accomplished and blue line is what we spent for that. So you see, if I accomplish this much, I am spending more money on that. If I accomplish this much, I am spending more money on that. So as far as spending is concerned, we are going very bad from until the throughout the project. The blue line is never crossing yellow line and going below. That was expected. So ideally, we want the yellow line should be on top. Our yellow point should be at top. That is the earned value. And blue line, we would love to keep it below the yellow line. That would say that we are doing more and spending less money. And orange line is a hallmark which tells us that what was as per the plan and where do we really start. So ideal picture would be that our yellow line must always be on the top. Blue line should always be somewhere below that. I don't say that it should be below the pink line. Pink line, we don't compare the yellow line with the pink line. We can only compare the blue line with the yellow line and the orange line again with the yellow line. Yellow line is the key. That's why it is called earned value management. And you remember the formula we gave for earned value. Earned value is equal to planned value divided by, earned value as PV by EV. Yeah. Let me see. Yeah. Okay. This is, yeah. Schedule variance was, sorry, and it's not earned value. Schedule variance is earned value minus PV, or SPI is schedule performance index is earned value divided by PV. So when you're comparing schedule performance, we compare earned value against the planned value. But when we are comparing the cost, we compare earned value against the actual cost, meaning yellow is the earned value and blue is the actual cost. So earned value minus actual cost are in a CPI formula, EV divided by AC. We find a ratio between EV and AC. How much have we actually achieved and how much have we spent? The money we have actually spent should be less than the earned value. Then the situation is good. Otherwise, it is bad. So we had two other formulas we talked about, EAC, estimate at completion, which is BAC divided by CPI. BAC is the topmost point of your pink graph. Like in here, this point of the pink graph, pink graph, the S curve we call it, the top point of that is called BAC. So if you want, this is the budget at completion, that's the total budget of the project, but how much more will be spent? What is actually going to be spent based on our yellow line? The yellow line tells us how we are performing. So if we keep on working on this pace, we may not end up completing the project at this point, but we would be completing it much later. So that would be my expected estimate at completion, EAC. So to calculate the EAC, we have this formula. The value of BAC divided by the current CPI, or the estimate to completion is how far behind we are. So new estimate at completion minus whatever we have spent so far, that is our estimate to complete. We need this much more money to complete the project. Okay. So earned value management, there are some questions here. First of all, establish a performance measurement baseline to create a reference point for the metric. So this S curve I talked about, which is created in the beginning in the planning for a predictive project, is your performance measurement baseline or the schedule baseline. So answer 3 questions. How many iterations are planned in your agile project? How many iterations are there? How many story points are there? And what is the release budget? Right? So based on that, we can exercise earned value management within an iteration. And in an iteration in agile, we would be saying the planned value is the budget for planned work in an iteration. So say you said, we don't calculate it in terms of money in an agile project. We would say we have 200 story points is our planned value. So how many story points have you actually accomplished in one iteration? Maybe that is 180 story points. So we are behind on our schedule in a way. And what is the actual cost incurred to complete an iteration deliverable? So how much actually effort has been put in doing how much work? So basically, the same kind of mechanism of earned value may be applied to a agile project, but not at the whole project level, but at just an iteration level. So an iteration may be treated as a mini project. Then coming over to the resources, naturally, the number of resources are also going to change. Resources could be people, it could be items, things, machines, tools, and equipment and raw material. So yes, of course, we did calculate number of people and number of resources required for each activity in the beginning, but later on, as per the things are changing, the change requests are being moved. So the number of resources may also be altered. So include the team and external contractors in your resource calculation, because the outsourced contracts are also part of the same project. They are considered part of the project. Those subcontractors are the subcontractors of the project. Then we monitor for risks, how much cost overruns are there, how much schedule delays are there. So we will look at that aspect from the resource point of view, as if we can tweak that and correct that. Conduct checks on contracts like procurement process compliances, periodic progress or activity reports, and things like that. So because we are having some physical intelligent resources, the human resources, so at least with the human resources, or for that matter with the contractors, we need to communicate as well. So the requirement of communication planning is also somehow associated with resources, at least for the human resource side. And communication also, you remember, it relates to the stakeholders. So physical resources, the material resources, we don't have to, they're not non-human resources. So we don't have to look at their emotions. They don't have emotion. Things don't have emotion. So we just keep an inventory of items, how much equipment or items were supposed to be there for this activity, how much were made available, and things like that. We can keep a inventory control kind of a mechanism, which is non-emotional in way. And one of the key policies in managing things is just in time. The whatever resource is required to be available for an activity at a specific point in time, we want that resource to be made available just in time, meaning we don't want to keep that resource available maybe a month earlier, because if I get that resource a month or a year earlier, I will have to maintain and store and do things with that, and that would be extra cost. So naturally, we can run our cost benefit analysis, and we can say, okay, well, I am getting a very good rebate, so maybe I can buy this thing earlier because the cost of maintenance, etc., is less than doing that at the last moment. But you see, generally it is found that ordering the moments and getting the moments just in time before that thing is needed probably saves us a lot of money, right? But anyways, I leave the decision on you, whether you want, when is your just in time, right? Whenever it is cost benefit analysis says that it is appropriate to acquire this equipment, say 1 day earlier or 1 month earlier, whichever is most appropriate and more feasible for you, go for that. Ensure physical resources assigned are available as planned. Monitor planned and actual utilization of the resources, that is the inventory control, and perform the processes throughout the project. So physical resource management is going to happen throughout the project, especially when it is being executed, right? As far as resource allocations are concerned, we need to naturally, every change in the project, the change request is moved, that may impact the resources, and the resources will automatically be adjusted to suit the new scope, time, and cost baseline. And therefore, we have to keep our resources up to date according to the baselines. So what has been used to date? I'm keeping a record of the inventory. What is still needed? Review performance usage to date. When monitoring the expenditures, identifying and dealing with the resource shortages, ensuring the resource use and release, informing stakeholders of issues with relevant resources. So it's more of a inventory control mechanism, which we generally exercise in our organizations. Okay, as far as the changes and contract disputes are concerned, naturally in a predictive project, we do have a process for performing integrated change control. That is the process where all the change requests are submitted, and change control board comes and the board decides which change requests are approved and which are not. On the other hand, in an agile project, we don't have a change control procedure. We don't have change request even. We have a backlog reprioritization, which we call backlog grooming, product backlog grooming, or refinement, right? When the initially backlog was created, it was prioritized. But then after every iteration, we reprioritize it, or we groom it, or we refine it. So that's how we manage change in an agile project. And as far as the contract disputes are concerned, we consult with organizational process assets and look at the contractual agreements or the contracts before making any decision. Quality management, naturally, quality management is, I would call it, after scope, time, and cost, quality is the next most important objective of the project. Although it is not having a baseline, but after scope, time, and cost, quality is important. So we have to assess the quality of project approaches and activities in quality control. We have to evaluate the deliverable quality through inspection and testing. Remember, quality control, just like in scope, we said that scope control is about the processes and scope validation is about the product. Quality control is always about the product. And quality assurance is always about the process. As far as quality control is concerned, the product is inspected or tested in quality control. Whereas, as far as quality assurance is concerned, while the work is happening, quality assurance is done through tools like auditing the process of work. It has nothing to do with measurement of the product. It has nothing to do with product measurement. It has to do with the process measurement, how well a process is going, the quality of the process. That is quality assurance. So, evaluate the quality of project activities, that is the quality assurance, and evaluate the deliverable quality, that is quality control. And quality control is done by inspections and testing, whereas the quality assurance is done through reviews and audits. Please remember that this is very important. Focus on detecting and preventing errors and defects. That is the purpose of quality management, that we want to detect the problems early and prevent them from happening. That is actually what, even quality control contributes to quality assurance, because when there is a problem in a product, that is reported back and then we fix it. We improve our processes, while the quality assurance is already doing its own work by reviewing an audit, but it gets a major output when an item is rejected. So immediately that means there is something wrong with some process somewhere. That's why the faulty items are coming out. So process goes into review, right? Processes are reviewed to find where the fault is occurring, and therefore the project activities could be corrected for quality assurance. So good, ji. As far as evaluation and managing quality is concerned, in predictive project, we have quality control. We verify the deliverable. We identify and suggest improvements to that. We verify the alignment with the compliance requirement. We give the feedback and identify potential approaches. And these are portrayed in reports and recommendations. In Agile, because in Agile, everything is in hand of the team. Team decides. Team and customer and the product owner are responsible for setting and meeting the quality goals and metrics. Feedback from iteration continuously. Monitor the quality. So it is a continuous process. And where do we do the measurement of performance of quality? That is through the service level agreements, are the KPIs we are setting, are the contractual measures we are taken, and the quality methods and framework like Lean, Six Sigma. So that is about the quality. As far as quality assurance is concerned, as I said, we need to have quality audits. Somebody should be continuously checking how the things are going, how the process of quality is. Are the people awake? Do they know their job? Are they doing their job right? So we need to review them. We need to audit them. And that's where we need to have quality audits conducted by the quality assurance teams. These teams may be internal or external to the organization, specifically from the predictive point of view. As far as Agile is concerned, in Agile, or for that matter in hybrid also, use audits to enhance or formalize the quality management complement in adaptive development approach. So even if you are doing some adaptive work, then you can have quality audit within our iteration only. Again, the same formula that we will not be planning for the whole quality of the project, but for the iteration. Quality control tools, well, we have already been aware about all of these different tools for data gathering. We have talked about creating checklists and check sheets, which is very useful in quality. We have the checklist and check sheet for quality control specifically. Statistical sampling is a tool for measurement. Questionnaires and surveys is a data gathering tool. Data analysis, we use the performance reviews and root cause analysis, which is also called Ishikawa or fishbone diagram. For data representation, again, we have the cause and effect diagram, which is again the root cause or Ishikawa, and scatter diagram and control charts and histogram and Pareto charts. All of these tools are used for quality control purposes. An example of the quality control process in a predictive project, we can use the checklists or check sheets to collect the data. We can plot the data on a histogram. We can use the Pareto diagram and apply the 80-20 rule. We can use the cause and effect diagram to see any variations or problems and probable possible solution, which is the best option. So selecting the best option with cause and effect. And finally, to perform a scatter analysis to get a kind of a statistical version of how the things are likely to happen. This is the Ishikawa. You probably have talked about it, learned about it various times. This was created by Ishikawa. There was a person who invented this method. And this is like a fishbone. So it is also called a fishbone. And it is also called cause and effect diagram. So the effect is the product quality may not be matching the requirement. And there may be many categories the problem could be categorized in. Maybe it might be the problem with the equipment or management. You could come up with your own number of main categories in which you have to find the problem. Then under each heading, you will have further causes. For example, if you have identified this must be the problem in the equipment, then probably these could be one of these reasons could be most appropriate for you. Maybe low maintenance, maybe old technology, maybe improper heading. So when you will analyze the whole thing, you say, okay, well, management does not apply, and this does not apply, and that does not apply. And maybe this is the problem, lack of training in people. That could be the problem why this quality problem is occurring. So you have to, it's kind of an analysis technique. And there is another method which is called YY method or 5Y method. And probably I did talk about it with you. Mazin, can you tell me what was the 5Y method?
5Y method is to asking the reason of something to find the cause result for cause reason for that issue. Okay. So you will ask some question. After the answer, again you will ask the same question, why?
Yes, exactly. So if we are asked this question why 5 times, we will most probably get to the root of the problem. That serves the same purpose that Ishikawa is doing. Ishikawa is helping in a diagrammatical manner, and YY is a verbal manner. You say, I am late today. Why are you late today? Because I woke up late. Why did you wake up late? So because I slept late at night. Why did you sleep late? I was watching a movie. So why was you watching a movie? So you see, ultimately you will get to the root of the problem. Generally, in 5 Ys, you will get to the root of the problem. This is how a scatter diagram is looking like. It is not really very confusing thing. It's basically a X and Y diagram. On X-axis, we have got one thing, and on Y-axis, we have got another thing. If there is a relation between X and Y, then if we plot points related to X and Y axis, and they make a shape, a line, a curve, then we say they have a relation. If they do not make a pattern and they are scattered all over, we call it a scatter diagram. So that means X and Y axis have no relation. That's why it is a scatter. Generally speaking, if you get a scatter like this, although it doesn't make a shape, but does it show some kind of orientation here? Adi, your view on this scatter diagram, is there any relationship between X and Y? Is it a completely scattered diagram, or is there a pattern behind it?
There's a steady decrease.
Steady decrease. Although I can clearly see that there is an approximate decline, like something is happening from here to here. This kind of relationship exists, but the points are scattered on right and left. So for statistical purposes, I would like to bring these points closer together. So we have many ways of doing that. For example, if this is x-axis x and this is y-axis, so because on the face value of x compared to y, we get this scatter diagram. But for example, if I have to reduce it, maybe I say that, okay, let's not take x, but let us take the square root of x. Now, what happens is when I take square root or square or log of one side, then either the scatter will expand or scatter will narrow down. For example, if I take square root of x, all the points in the scatter move more closer to the red line, right? So that serves our purpose. So basically, I experiment with various values, although it is a comparison between x and y. Generally, I would say, if it was a straight line like the red line, I would say as the x increases, y decreases. The y value is highest in the beginning, and it keeps decreasing towards the end, right? This is how the pattern is. So if x increases, y decreases. So x is inversely proportional to y. Am I right in saying that?
Yes, sir. Inversely proportional.
But because it is too much scattered, maybe when I experiment with the square root of x with y, that may give me approximately a straight line. So I can now say that square root of x is inversely proportional with y. You understand? So that gives me a better picture. Got it? Okay, moving on. This is the control limit. Control limit is like, in quality, we have the specifications defined, and well, I would not like to use this diagram. I would like to just ignore there is anything written on the diagram. I will like to erase that, because this gives an erroneous picture of the whole thing. So I will like to block it off. This is not there. Let's call it. This is not there. Okay. Now I'll tell you. Let us say this is the specification. I need something to be of this specification, right? How much variation from this specification is acceptable on the plus side and on the negative side? I say minimum, if the specification is this much, that is acceptable to me. And if it is this much, that is acceptable to me. Within, meaning anything in between this, any variation in between this is acceptable to me. So these are my control limits. You see, this one is my control limit. This one is my control limit, right? But actual specification is the mean point of that, is the exact mean point. I say that the height of this thing should be 10 centimeters. Say the height of something should be 10 centimeters, right? And I can accept at most a variation of 10.003. Anything beyond 10.003 is not acceptable and would be considered out of control limit. And anything to less than 9.997 is also not acceptable to me. That means anything between 9.997 and 10.003 is acceptable. Actual specification was 10 centimeter. Anything more than, any specification more than 10.03 is not acceptable. Anything less than 9.997 is not acceptable. Now, that means this point is 9.999. This point is 9.998. This is 10.001 and 10.002. All of these are acceptable values, but the best would be if the things are exactly 10 centimeter. But if they are 0.003 plus or minus, that is okay with us. This is called my control limit. Okay, what are these points plotted? When I check the product which is being produced, one product comes out to be 9.991. The other one comes out to be 10.0015. And this one comes out to be 10.0005. This is exactly 9.999. This is 9.9995, right? And so on. So all of these readings are acceptable to me. I'll not reject any product which is within the range of 9.997 and 10.003. This is how we visualize this data. And although the target specification was 10 centimeter, but we have accepted a variation of plus minus 0.003 centimeter, right? So that is what it is. Now, the problem here is, which is called as rule of 7, which is written here, follow the rule of 7. If 7 points occur on above the mean continuously, consecutively, or 7 points occur under the mean consecutively, that means there is not a problem as yet, but there is a growing problem. That the readings are going off the chart. For example, that we have the 7 points. I'll plot the 7 points. Like this point is here, this point is here, then here, then here, then here. All are on the positive side, but they are like here. That means why nothing is going in the negative side? That I must be indicated. I must be, that gives me a control that if all the points are going on positive side, then there is a trend moving towards the positive side. The machinery which is producing these items is a little askew towards the positive side. And if this askew keeps increasing, soon we will be getting points in the outside the control limit. Or similarly, maybe if all the points are in negative, we will soon be getting points here. So we don't want that. So 7-point rule is a kind of an indicator that check your equipment. There is something wrong with it. So the best option is that your points of observation are scattered on the positive and negative side equally, right? Consecutively, they are not occurring. If consecutive 7 points do occur, then there is a problem. This is called rule of 7. Do you understand this point?
Yes, sir. Further
Yep.
from the axis.
Good, good. Moving on, this is the Pareto chart. I think you know what it means. We have talked about it. So can you interpret this, Mazen? What does this mean? What does this chart show? It is 80-20 rule, the Pareto chart. On the x-axis, it is showing the local resident needs. The needs are in these 6 categories. The local residents want less road traffic. 44 of them are asking for less road traffic. 23 of them are desiring for more trees and improved landscaping. 14 of them are talking about new playgrounds. 9 of them are talking about better community center spaces. 6 of them need more nearby shops, and 4 of them need better nightlife. So what should you do first? You must try to achieve the desire of the majority. Isn't it true? So I can order these categories in such a manner that the bar of the most important thing comes first. It is just like we prioritize the product backlog, right? It is just like that. The most important requirement comes first, then the next one, then the next one. And if we can fulfill 20% of the requirements, we will achieve the result of 80%. For example, what is the total of this? 44 plus 23, this is 67 plus 14, 77 and 81, 81 and 9, 90, and this is total 100 items, right? So if I can address 44, first two, that comes out to 67, first three, that comes out to be how much? About 80%, right? About 80%. So if I address these 3 requirements only, which are approximately, not exactly, but approximately 20% of the number of requirements, I will address the problem of 80% people. That is the 80-20 rule. Addy, are you with me?
Yeah.
Do you agree with me?
Yes.
Okay, good. If you're following it, I think you might be knowing it already. It is in your research, you probably might be using this rule a lot many times. So I'll not harp more on it. We do understand that. Then comes over the quality of processes and product, and I've already talked about the quality control and quality assurance, because when it is processes, it's quality assurance. When it is product, it is quality control. And for agile, we have quality is closely linked to the product acceptance criteria. So in agile, we are more concerned about the acceptance criteria, and acceptance criteria means the quality is okay. Update these criteria as experimentation and prioritization occur in the product backlog. So basically, we don't have a very elaborate process for quality, but quality is built into our agile process, right? So while we are reprioritizing the backlog and all, and using our acceptance process and acceptance criteria, we are basically abiding by the quality. But in predictive project, it is more elaborate, because we are not talking about small little things. We are talking about the whole quality of the whole project and the whole product. Verify deliverables. So when do we verify deliverable? When the quality control is done on something, that is called verification of deliverable. Actually, in monitoring and control, basically 2 actions are taken on deliverable. Everything else is taken on the process. Like, there are about 12 different processes in monitoring and control in predictive project. And out of those 12 processes, 10 are about the process itself, the work itself. Only 2 processes deal with the deliverable. One is quality control, where the verification of the deliverable is carried out, whether it is according to the quality and it has been verified that this is according to the quality. That is first check. And the second check is validation of scope, where that product which has already been quality controlled can be verified, can be validated according to the acceptance criteria. But you see, when we were talking about Agile, we said that acceptance criteria actually is built into the Agile process, and therefore the acceptance criteria includes the requirement of quality and scope as well for that requirement, right? So basically, verification of deliverable and validation of the product is both happening at the same time at the user story level in Agile. But in predictive, we have separate processes, quality control and scope validation. These two processes can happen together, but generally they should happen in order. First, the quality control should happen. Once that means the deliverable has been verified, and once the deliverable has been verified, we can then do the user acceptance on that, and we can validate it. And once it is validated, it is ready to be handed over to the customer. So good so far?
Yes.
Okay. Then we come over to the risk. We have talked about the risk already. We understand that risk management has a process. We have got, to identify the risk in predictive, and we have to plan for that, analyze the risk, identify the risk, and then develop the risk responses. Then those responses are implemented, and we have to monitor the risk and so on and so forth. That is the process happening in the predictive project manager. Whereas, again, in adaptive, we are working on iteration level and on increment level, and the risk management is inbuilt into the iteration. The work of the of an agile iteration, management of risk is part of that. Meaning, the management of the risk activities are actually included in the user stories. So that is as far as the risk is concerned from the agile point of view. For the predictive project, there are certain guidelines for monitoring the risk, enable decision making based on current information about overall risk exposure and individual risk, continuously monitor status, probability, and impact, identify new risks. That is a continuous process in predictive project. Though we start with identification of risk, but throughout the life of the project until the project is completed, the process of identification continues because there is always a probability of getting new risks as we move on. Reassess current risks, close out outdated risks, those risks which did not occur, and they are no more important, we should close them down. Perform on a regular basis and continuously improve your risk effectiveness. There are some questions to ask. Are project assumptions still valid? Have risks changed or been retired? Like, outdated risks. Are risk management policies and procedures being followed? That is according to the risk management plan. Have the contingency reserves been modified? And do we need a risk audit? So these are the things which are required to be done for the monitoring of the risk. Review your reserves. Again, from the risk point of view, we have reserves, we have contingencies. So we keep analyzing our reserves. Are they enough? Are they sufficient? Do we need to amend them? So establish the amount of contingency and management reserves needed. Is performed throughout the project. Compares amount remaining to determine if adequate. If you have exhausted all your contingency funds, that means you have no more money left for dealing with risks anymore. So you must move a change request to your bosses that there have been more risks than we expected in this project, and due to that, the contingency we kept has been exhausted. So we may be allocated more funds for further contingency for the remaining part of the project. And management reserve is also for the same purpose. That is the reserve kept by the management to be given to you in emergency. But what if the contingency has been exhausted and even management reserves are insufficient to deal with the thing? So we need to move a change request for that. This may be communicated with a burn down chart. how many contingencies were there and how many contingencies are left so far. Risk register is the document where all the risks which have been identified, and whenever they are identified, they are registered on the risk register, and all what is happening with that risk, responses and actions and ownerships and all, they are all recorded on this risk register. Okay, moving on to compliance. We did talk about compliance, that in a predictive project, compliance is always part of the acceptance criteria, and that is established when the requirement for the whole project is established. In Agile, we have the acceptance criteria for each user story, but compliance requirement is part of the definition of done that is only required to be fulfilled when a group of user stories which have been accepted already are to be handed over to the customer. That is the point when definition of done is to be accomplished. That means that compliance is to be accomplished. Examine the business value. That again, getting back to where we started with a business value. Why are we doing this project? We have to continuously keep in contact whether our project is aligned with the organization's strategy and the business objective, and we must reevaluate, re-examine all the time as if we understand and know when we are getting out of line. That is examining the business value. Connects way of working with your business acumen, which we have studied in the second chapter, first or second chapter. Tailor work process, approaches, and tools along with leadership skills to examine and improve value delivery. And that's it. Questions here? While you are working on a SWOT analysis for a risk response, a team member asks you to show them how it is done. Which type of coaching is this? SWOT analysis for a risk response. Which type of coaching is this? Informal, formal, scheduled, or time bound? Yes, Eddie, what do you say?
Informal, sir.
Informal, very good. A team member asked you if they could lead an estimating meeting. I think we saw this question earlier. Which skill will you be coaching the team members? Servant, facilitating a meeting, emotional, or leadership?
B.
B.
This two question already solved the
Okay,
last
probably
session.
all of them are being repeated. Just tell me, have you seen this question? I think we have done all these questions. So we can just move ahead.
Yes.
Okay. Next part is issues and impediments, but we have already been talking for last 2 hours. So I would say that we have a little bit of break. Is it all right with you?
All right, sir.
So we have a break for around 10 minutes, and then we'll be back, right? Say 12 minutes, okay? So I am setting the clock for 12 minutes.